All right, now we'll decide really who is to blame, because Democrats always blame Republicans and Republicans always seem to blame Democrats. We bring in Louisville, Kentucky-based radio host Leland Conway for that. Leland, this brings up an interesting point, which is how much wiggle room does President Trump have with his base? Building the whole wall conceivably costs about $25 billion. Now you are talking about getting less than a tenth of that in this compromise. Is that enough for the base to believe the president is keeping his word?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And I think the problem here, because I was listening to that report from a couple moments ago and who is to blame, and I kind of think both sides are to blame in this case. The president has to do something on border security, and it has to be something big, right? But I also believe there's room for a little compromise in the sense that you can build an actual wall along many parts of it. You can build a virtual wall along other parts of it. But something big has to come out of this. It can't just be a little bit of fence here and a little bit of fence there. It's got to be huge. So I think there's wiggle room, and I think there's a lot of Americans who believe that border security has to come first. You know, and if you don't have that component of whatever immigration reform is coming along, you've really got nothing with I think, Trump supporters.
But is it about the semantics? You know, you just use the words border security, which is what the Democrats like to say. The president says build the wall, meaning a large, impenetrable barrier. It makes you think that back to, what was it, a year ago or so ago, we were going through this immigration fight, and there was going to be, remember, DACA for the entire wall? You have to wonder if that would have been a good deal to take back then.
Well, yeah, because I think, here's the thing. I think both sides are wrong on this. I mean, I think there's a component for dealing with things like people that have already come here but aren't committing any crimes. But there has to be security first. So maybe that deal would have looked a lot better. And I think that middle America wants to see that there's serious action on border security. If they see that, I think they'll be a lot more amenable towards how do we deal with the people that are already here. You mentioned DACA. So where do we go from there? Do we do a path to citizenship?
But this brings up this larger question. You say both sides are to blame. The president was elected as negotiator-in-chief. The Republicans have got both the House and the Senate. At least they will for the next couple of days. But in 2 years, they still couldn't get anything done. Why should the Republicans' base feel better? Why should the president's base and the Republicans' base feel better about the next 2 years when all of a sudden he's going to be having to negotiate with Nancy Pelosi rather than Paul Ryan?
Right. Well, you know, and that's the problem. The problem is that Republicans over the last 2 years have been really weak on this issue. They're afraid. And I don't quite understand that. When we're talking about border security, Leland, this is a winning issue with middle America. Again, I think a border package that includes some kind of path to citizenship is amenable to most middle Americans if the border security is first. I do think the president's path is much harder now that he's going to be dealing with Nancy Pelosi. But I also think the Democrats are smart enough to recognize when they see the polls, middle America wants to see border security. I think it's a winning issue for President Trump, even if he doesn't have control of the House.
When you say it's a winning issue, you mean simply using it as a wedge issue as a winning issue, or he can actually win and get the money for it?
I think it's a winning issue to stand on the side of border security. I think most Americans
if that's a winning issue, why doesn't the president, or why shouldn't he say, look, this is an issue of national security? You got Mick Mulvaney up there going, well, we've come down from $5 billion to some other number. We had Matt Gaetz on saying, well, it had to be a crooked number, meaning something that begins with 2 or above. Why not just say, look, we need $25 billion for the wall. Bring me that, or the government stays closed. Is that a winning issue too?
Yeah, I think so. I really believe that most Americans want to see border security, and I think the president's on solid ground standing firm on that. I do have an issue, though, with the president's rhetoric on saying, I'm going to shut the border down if I don't get my wall. Because I look at that and I say, wait a minute now, if we can shut the border down, why do we need the wall? I think he undermines his own point when he says that. So that rhetoric right there is actually hurting a little bit.
And shutting the border down, at least at the legal crossings, would probably undermine the economies of California, Texas, Arizona, and a couple of other states.
Well, and you'll also force illegal crossings away from those checkpoints, and it would be an even bigger problem.
Yeah, interesting point. No surprise, the interesting points come from a man named Leland. Best to your father as well, sir.
Will do. Thank you. It's good to be on with you.
All right, good to see you.